Let's get analysis from Ross Feingold. He's an Asia political risk analyst speaking to us from Taipei. Hi there, Ross. So the Chinese are clearly angry, you would think rightly so. Is this a step backwards now in the relationship between the US and China after that attempt to mend ties during Blinken's visit on Sunday and Monday?
I think this will probably be in the news cycle, mostly in China, maybe for a few days, but it's not going to be a long-term impediment. Look, U.S. presidents have periodically insulted Chinese leaders. Chinese media insults U.S. and Western European leaders pretty much every single day. So I think the two sides are used to this kind of language. And the reality is, and I think China obviously knows this, Biden probably said that because there's a lot of criticism in the United States, including from members of Congress, about how Secretary of State Blinken conducted himself in Beijing. There's a school of thought which has some accuracy to it that maybe Blinken was just too accommodating for the sake of having these meetings and meeting Xi Jinping, and just for the sake of saying we had some dialogue. So it does come across a bit as President Biden was trying to do a little bit of damage control and show that he is still tough on China.
Well, Biden rather made this comment at a fundraising event in California. So do you think a slip of the tongue from him, or did he really say it on purpose because of the event that he was at?
I don't think it had too much to do with the fundraiser, although that's a really interesting question because something that's going to be playing out in the coming months as we get into the U.S. presidential election cycle is how much will foreign policy and how much specifically will China issues be relevant. For the Republican candidates, they'll probably be talking about China a lot more than one would expect President Biden to. Normally, you'd expect President Biden to talk about his domestic policy initiatives, especially when he's at a fundraiser with Democratic donors. So again, I think this was more President Biden just trying to show a broader audience, the media, the critics, that he could still be tough on China and he could still use strong language to describe Xi Jinping.
You mentioned earlier that Blinken's visit has been criticized, many seeing him as being soft on China. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think he was?
Yeah, I thought the timing of the trip wasn't really ideal. There's still too many things going on. Where from a U.S. perspective, you're saying, we'd like China to stop doing certain things, whether that's in trade or in the South China Sea towards Taiwan. So in a way, the situation's not so different than February when the trip was canceled because of the spy balloon. I'll just give you one example. This news about the possible Chinese military expansion in Cuba. This was in the news days before Blinken went to China. So again, you say China's doing a lot of things that the U.S. doesn't like, but you're still going there just for the sake of having dialogue and saying, oh, well, talking is really important, but actually didn't really walk away with much. So it brings us back to the question, was now really the right time to do this?
Yeah, those questions that still many will be debating. Ross Feingold, live there from Taipei. Thanks as always, Ross.